Hello, guys. Welcome here to our out of turn 4 Daytona 500 and NASCAR season preview show. Long time no see. We missed you. Of course, if you missed our first episode, it was back Saturday night before the Clash. So we haven't had a show in a few weeks, but we're back. Hope you guys are enjoying your work week. Of course, we're here at noon on Friday. And of course, we got a lot to get to today, so let's not waste too much time. Of course, coming up on the show, we're going to discuss the latest NASCAR news. We won't have much of the big stories, but we'll have quite a few. Then we will do our Speed Weeks recap. I'll give you guys my 5 bold predictions going in to the NASCAR Cup Series season. I'll also give you my playoff predictions and my race weekend picks for Trucks Xfinity and Daytona, or Trucks Xfinity and Cup at Daytona. But we begin with the latest NASCAR news. Alex Bowman and Ally have signed long-term extensions with Hendrick Motorsports. Of course, Alex Bowman, he is signed through 2026, while Ally has signed through 2028. And can I just say how great it is to see a sponsor like Ally continue to have Alex Bowman's back through, all this. Because again, we saw what happened with Nationwide when, a couple years after Junior retired, Ally had left. Nationwide had left Hendrick Motorsports. Put Alex Bowman's career in question, especially because a lot of Chevy, suppliers had to sponsor him through a full season. And while Jimmy Johnson was set to retire, there were questions that surrounded Alex Bowman's future at Hendrick as well. That was ultimately silenced when Bowman moved over to the 48. So again, Alex Bowman's a talented guy. Take it how you feel, I know there are people that think he's a hack, Denny Hamlin. But, he's a very talented race car driver, and frankly, I just don't think he'd have much of a career outside of Hendrick Motorsports, so it's great to see that those two get the deal done. Of course, we saw what happened with Kyle Busch last offseason, so I think a lot of people just nervous when they saw that, and they were just like, oh boy, here we go, Kyle Busch all over again. But here's the difference. This is Rick Hendrick. This isn't Joe Gibbs, the con artist. But congrats to Alex Bowman. He's not the only one that signed a contract extension this week at Daytona. The other ones, of course, Team Trackhouse has signed both their drivers, Daniel Suarez, Ross Chastain, through the 2025 season. And it's good because, Daniel Suarez, of course, not many teams have had his back in the past. Of course, he ran for Stewart-Haas, Joe Gibbs Racing. Unfortunately, neither of them really wanted to keep him around very long, so it's great to see Suarez continue to get his shot with Trackhouse, and it's great to see a team like Justin Marks' team continue to support him, and same with Ross Chastain. We know how talented Ross Chastain is. I mean, for God's sakes, he was the runner-up in the championship last season in his first ever championship 4. And quite frankly, he posed the biggest threat, I believe, to Joey Logano in that whole race. And, while he wasn't close, he very well could have won the title. So, it would have shocked me if Ross didn't get a contract extension. And like I said, it would have made him the top free agent going into the offseason. I know Suarez brings a lot of sponsorship. Ross Chastain might not, but Ross would have been a top free agent if he was available as well. But glad to see those deals done. Now there's no more questions going into the season. These two can do what they do best with no fear. NASCAR also made a big announcement this week. regarding future markets they would like to get into. Of course, we know they've made a pretty decent presence in the Los Angeles market. While now they are eyeing the New York City market, potentially a street race in New York City. Other options, of course, were listed, and it includes Denver, then leaving the country and going to places like Mexico, Canada, and the Middle East. Yeah, NASCAR wants to go to the Middle East. The last part I don't like. We know there's so many issues with LIV golf right now. We know the security concerns that F1 faces going to places like Abu Dhabi. That part I don't like because, F1, I mean, let's face it, up until this year didn't have an American driver. We know. I don't want to bring politics into it too much, but I will just say I just don't think the Middle East is a good spot for NASCAR right now. At least not the Cup Series. Mexico and Canada, those are races that I said last year needed to happen. They should have happened 2 years ago. You know, that should be a guarantee that they race at those tracks. As far as if they go to Mexico and Canada, I question where they should race. Mexico, I mean, Autodromo, I think it's Hermanos Rodriguez, whichever one F1 runs in Mexico, I think they should run there because I believe they haven't run there since the '08 season in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So they should bring that track back for the NASCAR Cup Series. And then as far as Canada, I think you got two tracks up there that could be really, really good. Montreal, I feel, could provide a good atmosphere, a good race. We know Montreal wanted a cup race a few years ago. NASCAR wouldn't give it to them. And then we know, who is it? We know Canadian Tire Motorsports Park and NASCAR have most recent working history. We know how dangerous that last turn is at Canadian Tire. I think it could provide for some really good racing, some high-speed racing. So another track I think NASCAR should explore is Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. But I'd love to see those two on there. I don't know if, Colorado would be a nice place to explore. I believe Seattle was the other market they were considering. And again, they'd be great markets for the future, but I don't feel like we need another street course. And as far as New York City, I'm all for it if it doesn't hurt Watkins Glen or Pocono. I mean, let's face it, I'd say Pocono, you have better chances of bringing the New York City crowd in, and as well as the Philadelphia crowd. So I really don't see why you need a race in New York City because you already appeal to that market with Pocono. And again, if you bring NASCAR to New York City, I think you're going to eliminate that market, that track completely, and Watkins Glen shouldn't even be eliminated. Watkins Glen shouldn't even be in the discussion of being eliminated because Watkins Glen, of course, is sold out, I believe, the last 6 or 7 seasons. And they've been a constant presence, either sold out or close to sold out for the last 20 plus years. I feel that would be a terrible way to end a relationship if they did that. So that's just my biggest fears with the New York City market. But again, I think it wouldn't be horrible. Just don't ruin those relationships is all I ask. More so Watkins Glen, but, Pocono doesn't deserve to go off, either, especially now that we're losing Auto Club as a 2-mile racetrack. I think we need to keep Pocono on as such. All right, Speed Week's recap. Of course, we begin with Wednesday. Alex Bowman, Kyle Larson, they claim the front row for the Daytona 500. And Chevrolet, this is big for them. This is their 10th straight year they have had a driver claim the pole for the Daytona 500. As far as Alex Bowman, it's his 6th straight front row start in the Daytona 500, and that is huge for Alex Bowman. He's set the all-time record. We know how dangerous Hendrick Motorsports has been with the Gen 6 at Daytona, and now Alex Bowman's continuing it with the Gen 7. Just remarkable how many good cars they bring in qualifying. We know, of course, this kind of gives you Ed Carpenter Racing vibes, because Ed Carpenter Racing's the Chevy team that brings it to Indy for qualifying, and unfortunately we really don't talk much about him in the race. So I just hope this time we're going to be talking a little bit more about Hendrick Motorsports in the Great American Race, but again, we shall see. The other big news out of Wednesday, Jimmy Johnson qualifies his way into the Daytona 500. Didn't have to worry last night in the duels, and neither did Travis Pastrana. Of course, I believe I made my predictions that I thought Austin Hill and Chandler Smith, and I believe even Zane Smith, I said those are the guys I think we got to watch to make it in on Wednesday. And Zane was very close. Unfortunately, just fell short in qualifying. But Jimmy, of course, we know what happened with Chandler Smith. Chandler Smith just did not do very well in qualifying. Had an electrical issue in the engine. Was forced to go to the rear for the duels. And then Connor Daly had a rare fuel line engine type issue or exhaust type issue. Didn't even get to qualify on Wednesday. So, either way, Johnson and Pastrana were in. And I'd said, actually, to my friends beforehand, I'm like, get ready. I think Travis Pastrana is going to qualify his way in. And the reason I had said that, of course, we know Chevy had so many open entries into the Daytona 500, but we knew Jimmy would probably take a precedence because, let's face it, if Jimmy Johnson didn't make the Daytona 500, there was going to be, and I had told them, if Jimmy Johnson didn't make the Daytona 500, this would have been a complete uprising, an uproar. Frankly, I hoped it, just for that, I hoped it would happen. Not that I wanted to see Jimmy go home, but I think, maybe it would have put a light on the charter system and brought about a change. Because if Jimmy doesn't make it, something's going to change with that charter system, or knowing our luck, the qualifying procedure, they'll bring back the past champions provisional. But, I knew Chevy would probably pour a little bit or invest a little bit into Jimmy and try to help him get in. And then, of course, with Pastrana, Toyota had no other entries going into the Daytona 500 that were open entries. All 6 of their cars were locked in with the charters. So what does Toyota have to lose? I figured they would give Pastrana a piece to work with, and of course, he showed up, he delivered. Then I knew they would go all in on Pastrana to try to get him in the 500, and they did just that. So great to see, of course, and they didn't even have to worry on Thursday, and good thing for that. As we go into Thursday, Logano and Almirola win duels 1 and 2 respectively. Zane Smith, the Truck Series champion, and Connor Daly have raced their way into the Daytona 500. And the reason I said Pastrana, good thing he qualified in on Wednesday, Pastrana and Austin Hill both got involved in an incident on track. Austin Hill was kind of already around, and Pastrana just unfortunately got into him, ended both of their days. Um, and unfortunately for Austin Hill, and unfortunately for Chandler Smith, they will not race on Sunday. But they both will race on Saturday, so we look forward to seeing them race for Colleague and RCR, on Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening at Daytona. But Connor Daly, of course, because of that Pastrana and Austin Hill incident, was able to advance. And Connor Daly said nothing short of, "We're lucky." He said, "We are very, very lucky to have made it into the 500. Didn't even sugarcoat it. Said we were lucky. And of course, that is big news that Connor got in. Of course, I was rooting for him. I was rooting for him and Chandler Smith. I mean, as much as I like Zane Smith, I'd said, he's got 5 more races. We don't need to worry yet. But unfortunate for Austin Hill and Chandler. But Chandler's going to get other opportunities this year as well in the 13. He'll make the field. Same with Austin Hill. I don't think there's as much fear. It's just unfortunate, and you hate to see it for a team like Beard Motorsports because, again, they're a team with only one full-time employee, as it's said every single year. But, again, Austin Hill's a great plate racer, and I think he would have had no issue getting in if it wasn't for that wreck. But, congrats to Zane Smith and Connor Daly. Zane Smith, by the way, by racing his way in, we now, for the first time in the history of the sport, have the defending Cup champion, the defending Truck champion, and the defending NASCAR Xfinity Series champion in the Daytona 500. Of course, Ty Gibbs being the defending Xfinity champion. So all 3 of them will race in the Daytona 500, and I think that's pretty good. I think they should represent if they're good enough to be in the Cup Series. So that's what I will say. All right. So now I'm going to get on to my season predictions. And I'm just going to start with 5 bold predictions. Of course, the first one, I think, unlike last year, we won't see many different winners. I think we'll see 14. I think 14 is a safe number. I know a lot of people are going to go out there and they're going to say, 16, 17 different winners. We might see a guy miss the playoffs. No, I think we'll see 14. I think that's a safe number. I think we'll see 2 get in on points. So I don't think we'll see last year's, parity as much. I think now that teams have figured out the next gen, a lot of teams did the skew of the rear end and all that. So now that they're allowed to do a little bit more with the cars, I don't like this, by the way. I did see a lot of the rear ends skewed at Daytona and the front ends like pinned down or whatever. I don't like that. I think they should have just told them they can't do that this year, much like last year. I think, that's going to take a lot of the parity away. So we know Chevy has dominated the last few years, but I think this is the year for Ford. They looked really good in race trim, and also really looked good in qualifying trim. They look like they got speed this year. I think Ford will win the manufacturer's title. Chevy's going to make it close. Chevy's going to make it interesting, but I think Ford will barely squeak it out. I don't know if Toyota's going to be in that discussion yet, to be honest. I mean, Toyota's, I think losing Kyle Busch is going to be a big hit for them. But I do think they'll have success. I just think, once again, they'll be kind of the 3rd manufacturer on that list. Another bold prediction. I think 2311 will be the best Toyota team this season. They will be better than Joe Gibbs Racing. Yes. Because Bubba Wallace, of course, it's year 3 for him with 2311. He's already showing speed. He's already showing, maturity, or rather growth with the team. So I think Bubba will have that breakout year. Tyler Reddick, of course, coming over, he'll have some growing pains to start, but I think he'll really pick it up, throughout the year. And having Kurt Busch as kind of that mentor to both drivers, that's going to be huge for this team. Having Kurt as a leader is going to be huge for this team. Much like Dario Franchitti is for Chip Ganassi Racing and IndyCar, this will be something that I think sets them out ahead of Joe Gibbs Racing. But feeding off of that, I think Bubba Wallace will make his first career NASCAR Cup Series playoff appearance. I think there's just no way, you can't associate growth. At least if he doesn't make the playoffs, there's really no growth there. But I think, he'll do it. Of course, I do have a race I already think he's going to win. So that said, we go on to the next one. And this one's a big one because I think everybody's putting all the marbles on Ty Gibbs winning Rookie of the Year. I think it's going to be Noah Gragson that wins Rookie of the Year. Noah Gragson's going to have Jimmy Johnson to help him out. He's also going to have Eric Jones. And mind you, Luke Lambert is Noah Gragson's crew chief, as Chris Gale is for Ty Gibbs. But I think, that combo at Legacy Motor Club, and Legacy is really, looking good. They're looking better. I think they could become one of those top Chevy teams this year. And having Eric Jones in the stable as well. And, I think they'll find a way. I think Noah will barely beat Ty Gibbs for Rookie of the Year. I don't know if he'll win a race. I don't know if either... I don't think either will win a race, but I think it's worth noting Noah Gragson will be Rookie of the Year. So those are my 5 bold season predictions. Not really that bold, but, I have to put that down. On to the playoff predictions. I think Ryan Blaney will be the NASCAR Cup Series regular season champion this year. He had a strong year last year. Really, to me, he looked better than Logano. Not saying Logano's championship's a fluke by any means, but I'm saying that Ryan Blaney looked just as strong as Joey Logano. And boy, if Blaney made the championship 4, I think he could have honestly challenged Joey Logano. I think, he probably could have been the champion because he was faster than Logano at Phoenix too. So, unfortunately for Ryan Blaney, it's a season of what could have been. But I think they'll hone in this year, and I think they'll get the regular season title. But going on, of course, for my playoff predictions, I think Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Alex Bowman, I think they're easy. You got to have them in. Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, I think will be in for Toyota. Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez, I think both Trackhouse cars will be in. I had said Bubba Wallace in my bold predictions. Again, this is in no particular order other than Ryan Blaney being the regular season title winner. But I think both 2311 cars will get in, Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick on wins. Chase Briscoe, Kevin Harvick, I think will represent Stewart Haas Racing in the playoffs. And then I think Joey Logano, it's tough to not put the defending champion in. He'll get in on a short track win, I believe. And then AJ Allmendinger, this is the big one. I think AJ Allmendinger will be the guy to get in. He almost won at Coda. He was close at Indy Road Course last year. And on top of it, we go to a street course, and he's the only one of the full-time drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series that has any experience on street courses. So I feel that's going to play to Allmendinger's favor. I think he could get one, possibly multiple wins. I think those guys get in on wins. I think that is the big possibility. The last two that I think get in, and I'm not saying they won't win, but I'm saying I think at the least they'll get in on points. I think it'd be very hard to say they don't get in. Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch, I think, will get in either on points or a win. And they will be the final two that get in. Anyway, my top 5 playoff spoilers. So if I don't list your driver, don't think that I don't believe they're going to get in. But I think these guys have the best shot of the drivers that are not in. And Austin Dillon tops that list. Of course, teammates with Kyle Busch this year, new crew chief. I think, this is a good chance for Austin Dillon. I think this is a really good chance for him to grow. And, having a teammate like Kyle Busch is always a big help. So I think, he could win a race and really spoil the playoff field. Christopher Buescher, of course, he's your Bristol night race winner. And really, RFK Racing the second half of the year looked really good last year. So I don't see why he wouldn't. Brad Keselowski, a strong plate racer. Of course, that point penalty on top of poor performances just ultimately killed him. But I think they'll overcome it this year, and they'll find a way to spoil it. Justin Haley, I have listed down, another great plate racer. He's also a decent short track racer. And I think having A.J. Allmendinger with him in the Cup Series is going to be another good tool to have. And then I have Eric Jones. Eric Jones, I think, could play spoiler. Of course, he won at Darlington in the Southern 500. We know he's good at Darlington. And of course having Jimmy now in the stable, I think makes that team so much better than they already are. Will not make the playoffs. So these guys, I think, won't make it at all this year. But I will say, in addition to the spoilers, Ryan Preece could be the guy. Michael McDowell's his name's always mentioned. So don't think I don't believe those guys will make it. It's just I feel that those are the 5 that'll make the biggest noise this season. But as far as who won't make the playoffs, I said Gregson and Gibbs early. I'm going to stick by it. I just don't think they're going to get in, unfortunately. Ricky Stenhouse is another guy. Of course, everybody has him on a spoiler sheet every year. I just don't see it. Sorry, not sorry. I just don't see it. Almirola, again, he won his duel. I might have to change that, but I had this down from a couple weeks ago. I just don't see a path to it. And William Byron, I had on this list. What looked like it was going to be a season of big growth for William Byron. He looked for a while like that number 3 driver in the Hendrick stable. He's really now the number 4. I really thought this would be the year, or last year would be the year that we'd see growth out of the 24 driver. I just don't see it. Honestly, I think, I think we've gotten what we're going to get. And, I think this is the first year Hendrick will not have all 4 cars in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Again, I hope I'm proven wrong, but I think, as far as the 5 that won't make it, I think that's the boldest one, the biggest one that won't make it. Race weekend picks. Here we go. It'll be easy to pick Chase Elliott in the trucks, but I'm going to go a different direction. I think Raja Caruth could be the guy for the Truck Series at Daytona. GMS looked really strong in practice. Raja, I think, is with probably the best Chevy team. And again, you could argue, well, KBM is there. KBM is going to experience some growing pains too, being that new Chevy team. So I'm going to go Raja. I think Raja Caruth could spoil the race. This truck race it screams spoiler. So Raja will win tonight. The Xfinity Series at Daytona, I had to go Austin Hill. I think it was a close one. It was a difficult one. I had initially thought Justin Haley because of how strong Kaulig Racing is on plate races, but I ultimately went with Austin Hill because if he's out front, he's really hard to pass on restrictor plates. And I feel like he's going to have a chip on his shoulder after missing the 500. So Austin Hill, I think, will get the job done. Then as far as the Cup Series at Daytona, I made this bet on FanDuel, and I'm going to stick by that bet. And I'm also going to stick by this guy because he's been just so close the last few years. And I think this is the year he gets over the hump. Bubba Wallace will win the Great American Race. That's my prediction. Now, I think Ford could have something to say. I think Ford will have something big to say about that, but I'm going to go Bubba Wallace. I think, this has the makings of being his race to lose this time. Whether he finds a way or not, and hopefully he doesn't, I just really I'm high on him right now. I think he's going to impress on the biggest stage and silence the haters. All right. That's all we got for this NASCAR season preview and Daytona 500 special of Out of Turn 4. We're a little over on time, but we want to thank you for watching. Tune in to Sunday Morning Tinkle tomorrow morning. Jason and I are going to be recapping the Kansas City Chiefs and Mickey Mouse Mahomes Super Bowl victory. We will also be discussing a lot of the latest news, including the NBA trade deadline that we missed due to the Super Bowl. So tune in for that. And, of course, be sure to tune in to No Final Bell next week. As well as Out of Turn 4, we will be back on our Tuesday slot. So that's the other programming note I wanted to mention. We will be back in our Tuesday slot starting next week. So we'll have weekly episodes coming once again. Be sure to tune in for all that, and I will see you back here. If not Sunday morning, I will see you back here on Tuesday. Enjoy the race, everyone, and enjoy the weekend. Until then, goodbye, everyone.